WZK.
There is a very important race being run in Virginia today against Tim Kaine for U.S. Senator George Allen, and he's with us now. Hello, George. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Glenn, and there's a lot of folks voting in Virginia. I think people recognize that the decisions being made by Virginians will determine the trajectory of our country, and I think folks want to see change in Washington, and whether it's jobs, whether it's stopping these devastating defense cuts, whether it's unleashing the blessings of our plentiful energy resources from our coal fields to our coast, Virginians really want to see our country ascending again.
You know, what the president has done with sequestration is really going to affect Virginia.
Yes, sure will.
How do you feel about him saying, you know what, that's not going to happen?
Well, I don't know what. Well, he's the one who has said and has done nothing insofar as stopping this. This is a prime example of failed leadership in Washington. I was against that commission from the beginning. My opponent, Tim Kaine, continues to say it's the right thing to do, but they failed, and now half the cuts are coming from the paramount responsibility of the federal government as expressed in the Constitution, which is national defense. The House of Representatives in May passed a measure to avert these cuts. They made cuts elsewhere than in national defense, and what the president, Tim Kaine, and the Senate Democrats have said is that first of all, they've done nothing, and they say, well, we need to raise taxes. Well, that's really bad economics because that only would cause more job losses. And I think the men and women who serve in our armed forces should never be used as a political bargaining chip to raise taxes on job-creating small business people. That's where the jobs are being created, and the way you handle this is the balanced approach, and the best way to raise revenues is with a vibrant economy where people are working, businesses are prospering, folks are getting a paycheck rather than worrying about whether unemployment benefits will be extended. And that's the best way to raise revenues, not to harm folks with more taxes. I'm
very concerned about our country that it is this close when the choices are so unbelievably so different. I mean, really different. This isn't they're not close in ideology at all. And one is saying self-reliance, energy independence. The other is saying the same stuff he said last time, but everything has gotten worse. And like gas prices don't seem to matter to people, at least in the polls. Gas prices don't matter. The food in prices, hamburger going up 65% in the last 4 years. How do we rein this back in with half of the population not seemingly getting it?
Well, Glenn, I do think, folks, I try to explain on the fuel prices, gasoline prices, that people are paying about $30 more every single time they fill up compared to January of 2009. You ask folks, well, what would you do with that extra $30? Well, some would save it. Some would go out and eat at a restaurant. And restaurants really feel all of this because they get price surcharges, fuel surcharges on deliveries. And when people are having to pay more for fuel, then they go out to eat fewer times. And on top of it, then you have this health care tax law, this Obamacare, that's another impediment.
Okay.
But
let me go back
to put it in terms, Glenn, and you understand this. You got to put these issues in terms that people understand at their kitchen table. And I feel people in Southwest Virginia, in the coal fields, they understand this assault on coal. I heard one supervisor tell me, he said, look, Southwest Virginia lives or dies on the outcome of this election. So they know what Tim Kaine's and President Obama's EPA regs are doing to them. It's
not just the coal miners that are going to live and die on the coal regulations. We get 43% of our energy from coal. If they do this to coal, what they're planning on doing, and they will do, we are really, truly going to be toast. Millions of Americans will not be able to afford their energy, won't be able to afford their heat. I mean, we're headed for disaster.
I try to explain that very thing, Glenn, is that we'll be feeling the same pain paying our monthly electric bill as we feel every time we fill up with gasoline. If you knock out coal as a reliable, affordable source of electricity, that affects all of us in our homes, and it affects our technology businesses who need perfect power, no surges, no interruptions, and it has to be affordable electricity. And it's just so wrong that thousands of people in the coal fields, the railroads as well, that are losing jobs, and all of us, use electricity. That's why I say, Glenn, anybody who uses electricity ought to be on our side.
Okay.
Anybody who drives a car should be on our side. Anybody who thinks healthcare decisions ought to be made by doctors and patients rather than a panel in Washington should be on our side. Anybody who wants to work ought to be on our side because our proposals and reforms have been proven to create more job opportunities than what we're seeing right now, especially for young people graduating from college.
Let me go back to this, George. I think the Republican Party has 2 years. I think if they win the House and the Senate and the presidency, you've got about 2 years to actually do these things. Because everybody, since I was a kid, every president and every party has said we're going to be energy independent. There is no more time to screw around with this. We have to be North American energy independent, and we have to do it and do it in one term. How are you going to get that? How are you going to get that through if you were in?
Well, I agree with you. There's an urgency for action, and we've been punting on energy policy for decades. On day one, Glenn, if I'm hired on to represent the people of Virginia right after being sworn in as senator for Virginia, I'm introducing a bill to allow us in Virginia to produce oil and gas off our coast and then use the royalties for roads and transportation. Energy is the solution to so much of what ails our economy. If we unleash our American energy resources, from the Appalachians to the Rockies, from Virginia, from the Gulf to the barren North Slope of Alaska, hundreds of thousands of new good-paying jobs are created. We have more affordable fuel and food and electricity. We can have a manufacturing renaissance in this country. We're less vulnerable on hostile outside forces. We keep our money in our own country, and the federal government can get over $1 trillion in revenues without raising taxes. I aim to provide the political leadership to unleash the blessings of our plentiful American energy resources.
George, I wish you the best today, and we urge everyone within the sound of our voice, you've got to get to a poll today and vote. This thing cannot be close. We have to put some space, or there are 3,000 attorneys just in Ohio for the Democrats. This thing cannot be close, and if you're in Virginia, this is a very close race, and let's see what you can do. George, thank you very much.
Glenn, thank you, and everyone should vote as if America's future depends on it, because it does.
Thank you very much. George Allen from Virginia. By the way,